Hello YouTubers out in YouTube land, it's me, your favorite Bible thumper, Mr. Morris, and welcome to Morris Ministries. And today we're going to be getting into day 4. And we're going to start off by reading Genesis 14 through 19. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 4th day." So before we get into the more scriptural basis of all this stuff, let's tackle the nice sciencey stuff. Since this discusses more specifically the star creation or star formation, this is where we get into the Nebular Hypothesis. And the Nebular Hypothesis follows a very similar conscription as to the Big Bang Theory. The Nebular Hypothesis itself is the theory that the solar and stellar systems were developed from primeval nebulas, where is a cloud of gas in outer space. The Big Bang being very relatively similar. These gaseous molecules colliding together, making an explosion, and each one of these rotating masses outward leads to either gases or planets, and gases that would form masses that would relate to a nuclear fusion of some kind would become a star, and those things would be solidified around them, would just become dark planets. Well, as it relates to our solar system, we can see a lot of problems with the Nebular Hypothesis because it doesn't obey angular momentum laws, and there's been a lot of problems with it. People have been trying to reconcile it for years, and they haven't really had much luck. Really, ever since the days of Kant and Laplace, when they were going over these things, they knew the problems that they inherently had with it, but chose to persuade or push it forward anyway. An example being, if I were to take a yo-yo and spin it around my wrist and let it go, well, you know that it moves perpendicular, but the yo-yo itself is going to be rotating in the same direction that I was spinning it in with my hand before I let it go. So if I was spinning it to the right, I let it go, the yo-yo itself is also going to be spinning to the right as it flies away from you. That is a means of conservation of angular momentum. It shifts to the object in motion, and it's going to continue. But it also relates to things like an ice skater. So you see an ice skater spin, their hands are always far out, and the closer they pull it in, you see it spinning faster. Well, in our solar system, we don't see these principles working. For instance, the sun and our planets. Each one of the planets is moving in, well, each one of the planets actually happens to be in a pair with another planet. There happens to be 3 individual pairs in which the angle as well as the spin rates are similar. But they're all different. There are 3 different degrees by which these planets are rotating, which would suggest that it's not being conserved, or nor that it was not made from the sun. And the second thing is, that would be the first principle with the yo-yo, that they're not all moving in the same direction or at lesser rates, because some planets are rotating, not just orbiting, but rotating faster than others. The second principle about the ice skater, when you move your hands in, well, we would see that planets that are closer to the center of mass in the solar system, which would be the sun, would not only just be rotating faster, but should be larger, because most of the mass, as it spits away from a swirling surface, would kind of blob up next to the center where it came from. And we don't see that working. What we do see is smaller planets closer, bigger planets further away. Oh, excuse me. And that's the exact opposite of what should be happening. You know, taking the fact that, let's say, Jupiter should actually be in the spot of Venus, because it's much bigger. It's closer to the center of the mass of the solar system, because the sun itself holds 99% of the mass, but it only holds 1% of the angular momentum. The rate at which the sun is spinning, because the sun, or the rate at which Yes, the rate at which the sun is spinning only holds 1% of the entire angular momentum of the solar system, and since it is the center of the solar system, it should actually be holding the majority of the angular momentum. However, it's been dispersed to the planets. And if you were to look at the planets across the solar system, it is the larger planets that are not holding the larger portions of angular momentum. In other words, the theory is absolutely flawed, but it's what we see. But in terms of a Christian worldview where God made all these things, God made the earth and he made the lights and the stars, it means that it would have been there and there would have been no problems. Now, am I explaining it away? No. Because the purpose for creating the stars and things like that, how he made them, well, it's relative to the 10-dimensional universe that I was talking about before, and how as the gaps in the graviton lines go forward, we have our black holes, and it transfers universally outward. And when you see stars actually collapse on themselves, you can see this as an example. It actually hollows from the inside out. Cosmic ray bursts that are coming from collapsing stars are coming from the inside outward instead of the outside inward, because the energy is closed. A true cosmic ray burst is a 10-dimensional wavelength, and it's transferring energy instantaneously. It's only what we're seeing is the lag of energy transfer. But that's a topic for another time. But as it relates to this, seeing how God made everything, well, he put the things in first. Energy, darkness, dark matter and light matter comes in. It goes by means of creation, and it actually relates to the 10-dimensional universe we see as we see these foundations. So it's not necessarily explaining it away, saying that God made it that way. Well, he set the conditions by which those things would eventually come about anyway. But as it relates to us here, God made everything, and it also brings us to the fact of light, how light travels. Because if you were to look at the constants or the variables or constants, however you want to see it, about the speed of light and how it travels, the speed of light is supposed to be a constant. But the speed of light, based on what definition you're using, can be used on a variable of the universe. But light, as it does travel, as the universe is expanding, would mean that it's have to be moving slower, even just in the basic principle to travel. Therefore, it is going to take longer for light to travel, because the distance that light is, the universe is accelerating. It is not decelerating, which means the space that it's growing and moving through would have to be moving slower from each individual object. You can't say it's remaining constant, because those objects are moving further away. Therefore, the speed in which they're getting to you would also have to slow down. That's just one aspect of it, but this also gets us into the idea of the Doppler shifts. See, a Doppler shift would be like an ambulance moving to and away from you. When an ambulance moves away, it gets quiet. When it moves closer, it gets louder. Well, with planets, it's a blue and red shift. Red shift, it moves away. Blue shift, it moves closer. That actually isn't what happens. You see, it radiates light outward. But what's happening is the friction on dark matter is either causing it to accelerate or decelerate. See, if dark matter smooths are going in the way of light, it's actually going to mean it's accelerating through. And it's going to give you more of a blue shift. Whereas, if it's red, it's actually the dark matter spheres are moving perpendicular to the light, lower, and therefore appear red. It has nothing to do with how far away the light is or whether or not it's getting closer to you. It has to do with the light itself. It's an inherent principle within light. Oh, excuse me. Now, with this in mind, it gives you the idea that light accelerates and decelerates in certain portions of the universe, which is why light has been defined the way it has been. But there's that. This is where I want to get into the other verses of the Bible where it talks about the creation itself, more specifically this one. See, in Psalm 19, 1-4, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words in the end of the world. In them hath he sent a tabernacle for the sun. He talks about that every person on the earth, no matter what language they speak, can actually look up at the heavens We can just look up at the stars and know that he made them, that God made all of it. Because by your own science, no matter how you want to see it, you're going to see problems. Because even with a universal theory of 10-dimensional mathematics, or that you can see the light and how it travels and that kind of stuff, it all leads you to the idea that God made the universe, which is why it showeth knowledge. And it also comes out and says, their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. You see, because we know in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God. Now God spoke things into existence. He had to say these things. And in Psalm 147:4, he telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names. Each one of the stars has a name, and their words, the stars' words, call out throughout the entire universe, because it is the wheels and mechanisms of creation spinning across. God wants to show you something, he is going to spin the wheel of creation to tell you it. One subtle change here tells you many different subtle change here, tells you many different things there. And even in Isaiah 40:26, lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number? He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. The earth itself will not be recreated until after the second judgments come. God makes a new heavens and new earth that Isaiah talks about. But it is showing his strong, God's mighty hand. Now, his glory is the redemption, but it's in the creation that shows his handiwork. It shows you how God made the universe. And the other thing about where it talks about 4 signs and 4 seasons, this is extremely important to us, because God made the stars so that we know the appointed times, because that's another translation of and 4 seasons. Translation of and 4 seasons. See, and this is where we get into our Mazzaroth, the version of the Hebrew zodiac. And we're actually going to get into that a little bit right now. The planets as they exist, or not the planets, the stars and the constellations as they exist, if you were to look at their decans, or their associated stars within the constellations in orders of brightness, it actually tells you a story. And it tells you the story of redemption. We're going to go through that now. For instance, Virgo is the seed of the woman, the desire of nations, the exalted shepherd and the harvester. Libra, the price to be paid, the cross to be endured, the victim slain and the crowd purchased. Scorpio, the conflict, the serpent coils, the struggle with the enemy, the vanquisher of evil. Sagittarius, the double-hated one, triumphantly. He gladdens the heavens, he builds fire of punishment, casts down the dragon. Capricorn, light from death, the arrow of God, pierced and falling, springing up again in abundant life. Aquarius, life waters from on high, drinking heavenly food, carrying good news, bearing aloft the cross of the earth. Pisces, multiplication of the Redeemer's people, upheld and governed by the Lamb. The intended bride bound and exposed, the bridegroom exalted. Aries, the lamb found worthy, the bride released, making ready, Satan bound. Taurus, the invincible ruler come, the subtle vanquisher, the river judgment, all-ruling shepherd. Gemini, the marriage of the Lamb, the enemy trodden down, the prince coming in glory, his princely following. Cancer, the possession secured, the church firstborn. Israel, safe funding and everlasting kingdom. And Leo, the king revering, the serpent fleeing, the bowl of wrath upon him, his carcass devoured. Because each one of the constellations has a meaning, each one of the decans also has a meaning. If you were to take the meanings in orders of brightness, you would end up with something like this when it's translated in English, because the Hebrews don't necessarily have a direct translation for each one. And so you might have to pull from Egypt, you might have to pull from Assyrian languages to get this. And some people are having problems as to whether it's kind of a controversial topic to look at it like this, because you're moving more into astrology, but it is a fact that these things, if you were to put them in this order, does tell you the story of redemption as it is. And it would make sense why God told you that these are for signs and for seasons and appointed times, because it would let you know when it's coming through, because you see that these are 12 constellations, one of which that you can see, Leo. Well, Leo is the tribe of Judah, the king coming down, and we know that Jesus was born of the root of David, the line of the tribe of Judah. Each one of the 12 constellations also relates to a tribe going up and down, and what's going to be happening as it relates to biblical prophecy. One example being the blood moons and things like that, and how recently, I forget what other planet it is that came into the constellation of Leo. I don't know. I'll have to get back on that one. But it does give you an idea of the things that are about to happen as it relates to you and I immediately. That good things as well as bad things, judgments, it's all up there in the stars. It does tell you these things. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for watching. Any comments or questions, just leave them down below. And thank you for tuning in.